Beautiful morning, everyone. I'm excited to be part of this community, the Global Educator Tribe community, to contribute my part to improving the educational sector. I do know clearly that teachers are doing wonderful work already, so our contribution is to see how we can improve the sector. What are we talking about today? We're talking about character education, and so the theme of today's event is so apt because we're talking about shifting our mindset from an academic focused education to a character focused education. Because at the end of the day, our primary aim as educators is to raise better human beings, but somehow we seem to be focused on raising better scores, more scores, raising attainment, raising results, at the detriment of raising more honest people, more service-minded people, more compassionate people in our classroom. So we need to shift our mind back to what the primary aim is: better human beings rather than higher scores. Thank you. So why character education? I think the question becomes why not character education? Because I used to join the multitudes of people that used to complain about our country. My passion for character education comes from a place of saving our nation, right? I used to join the group of people that used to complain. It's leadership. That's the problem. That's why we are where we are. That's why Nigeria is in a sorry state. But I decided after a while that complaining doesn't solve any problem. What is the solution? What's the solution? And after um, thinking deeply, critically about our present situation and how we can get out of it, I felt education was the perfect solution, perfect institution for reforming society, right? And the question now became: is the education we are providing today adequate for what we are trying to achieve? Is it the right kind of education? And an education that is focused on just academics does not seem appropriate or ideal for solving the problem that we have in our country today, right? We need to look at another kind of education that will address the moral deficits, the values deficits in our society. Our problems are not intellectual. We all know that. Our problem is an issue of corruption. We have issues around corruption. We have issues around banditry, around kidnapping. So there's a huge values deficit. But the curriculum that we run in our schools today doesn't address the values deficit. It addresses intellectual issues. It addresses attainment. It addresses result, but it doesn't go straight to the heart. It hits the head, but it doesn't hit the heart. So we need a new kind of education that hits the heart. Yeah, so there are four educational philosophies, which simply means why do we educate? Teachers need to ask themselves that question. In fact, schools need to ask themselves that question. Why do we educate? Why are children in our schools? What's the ultimate aim of education? Right? So there are about four of them, but because of no time, I can't go into the four. I'll pick one. The most important for me is social reconstruction. And what does that mean? It simply means that we educate so that children can help change their society. In our country today, we need children, we need to raise adults, individuals that can change society, that can look at our value system and change our value system. That should be the ultimate aim of our education. Maybe other countries can focus on intellectual gains and other kinds of achievements. But here, what the achievement that we need is to change our value system, because that should be the foundation for whatever thing we try to build on. And in the classrooms, are we trying to change the value system? Are we trying to raise better human beings in the classroom? That's the ultimate question. So the kind of education we should be providing is the one that changes society. And by the time I started investigating that, I found what we call a theory called the Neo-Aristotelian virtue ethics. What does that simply mean? The Neo-Aristotelian virtue ethics talks about morality, talks about moral aims, talks about moral ends. It means that the curriculum should be underpinned by morality. That means that the things that we prioritize in our curriculum should be morally acceptable ends, raising children that will make decisions that will have morally acceptable ends. Every time that they make a decision, they ask themselves, this thing I'm about to do, how does it affect other people? How does it affect my society? Not just how does it affect me, but how does it affect others? Does it have moral consequences? That can help others. It's what I'm doing right now, the right thing to do. That is the kind of curriculum which we're talking about if we want to change our country. Yeah. So in building character and developing children's character, we have to look at the four building blocks. There are four building blocks for developing character. The number one building block is intellectual virtues, right? Character traits necessary for discernment of right action and the pursuit of knowledge, truth, and understanding. The intellectual virtues. In under the intellectual virtues, we're talking about autonomy, critical thinking, curiosity, judgment, reasoning, and all of that. And that's basically what the kind of education that we provide today is focused on developing intellectual virtues. The second virtue block is called the moral virtues, right? Things around compassion, courage, gratitude, honesty, humility, integrity, justice, respect. These are virtues that should be the foundation for building character, for building the right kind of character, the kind of character that we need in our country today. This is what is missing for me in our schools. The civic virtues also very missing. Examples could be citizenship, civility, community awareness, neighborliness, service, volunteering. Huge. You can find that this is really missing in our schools and it's missing in our society in general. The performance virtues is the last building block, which talks about confidence, determination, motivation, perseverance, resilience, teamwork, and all of that. This we can find in our schools. I think this is something that everybody wants to imbibe as a virtue, right? But the number two and the number three building blocks are missing in our society, in our schools and in our society, and this is where I think schools need to focus on. Everybody needs to realize that the other virtues, intellectual and performance, need to find their relevance in morality, in moral virtues, right? Because an armed robber can be is very confident. An armed robber is also very determined. He is very determined to rob a bank. But does that virtue have any essence if it's not ending up in morally acceptable ends? No, it doesn't. And an armed robber can thinking critically, can be very curious about what's happening in a bank. But does that virtue have morally acceptable ends? No, it doesn't. So as schools, as teachers, we need to focus in our classrooms on moral and civic virtues. Okay, now we're about to go into practical things that we can do as teachers to help raise morally sound children, to help develop the character of children in our classrooms. Now, in building character, there's a typology called character caught, character taught, and character sought, which means that these are the three ways that we can develop character, our children's character, right? Character caught looks at how children, without talking, how children can emulate or how children can develop their character even without us teachers saying anything, just by observing us, just by looking at us, just by looking at us as role models, they can develop their character. Character talks about all the things that we do in schools concerning teaching and talking about character education. And character salt, which is the highest level, which means that children, after going through the first two steps, automatically start looking for, by default, ways that they can develop their character. Now let me talk about two important things: teaching morally versus teaching morality. What we do in schools is most likely teaching morality, which is we're always talking about character. Teaching morality is acting as role models in character education. That means that as we do our profession, we act ethically and we're professional. And children look at that and develop their character unconsciously, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. Yeah. So how do children catch character, in quotes? How do they develop their character, even you without you talking about it? Number one, we have to act out as teachers the character traits we wish our children to possess. If you want children to be very respectful, you have to treat them with respect. If you want children to show compassion, you also have to be very compassionate. If you want children to show diligence and determination in their work or to be honest human beings, you also have to be a very honest person. So now that's number one. Number two, we have to celebrate and, if possible, reward exceptional virtue display. Now, in our schools, you find that at the end of the session, all we do about doing our prize giving day is to give award for first, second, third, best in math, best in English. We are sending a message to children that character doesn't matter here. What matters is intellectual results. So children strive throughout the year to be the best in mathematics, but don't put any effort to be the most honest. Children do their best to be the best in English, but put no effort to be the best service-minded child in the classroom. So we need to start rewarding children that show exceptional moral virtues. We also need to realize that we need to maintain a positive atmosphere within the classroom, because character doesn't develop in a very tensed, negative environment. It dies there. Or rather, what will develop are weeds, bad character, instead of good character. Finally, we need to collaborate with our parents. We can't do this alone. We can't do it in school and children go home and do something else. So we need to bring our parents on board so that children know that wherever they go, character matters. Now, in teaching morality and teaching character, we need to realize that there's some things that we can do to help children develop their character. Number one, we need to integrate a virtue in every lesson we teach. Character education doesn't say throughout what you're doing, it says that you can improve what you're doing. So in your class of fractions or environment or whatever you're teaching, you can integrate a virtue. You can say to yourself, I want to develop the virtue of confidence in my classroom today. I want to develop the virtue of service in my classroom today. I want to develop the virtue of curiosity in my classroom today. You can also use environmental displays to teach character education. Don't just put a multiplication table in your classroom without putting a definition of one of the virtues in the classroom. You should also take advantage of negative experience. Every time a child goes through a negative experience is the best emotional foundation, best time for you to talk about character virtues, right? You need to teach virtues also through discussion-based learning, meaning that as you discuss about virtues, you allow children to also talk back to you. That's the fastest way or the best way that they can also understand that this is something important that they must take seriously. Their character is important to develop. Now, at the highest level, we think children should begin to seek out ways that they can develop their character. Number one, how you can do that is to encourage them to use character journals from a very young age. Character journals simply means that they have a book where they can reflect on their character weekly. When they do that, they begin to consciously, deliberately improve on their behavior over time. And with that, they can convert a character. They can decide that, okay, this character trait is a bottom strength that I have, but I'm going to consciously begin to develop that character trait. Number two, you can teach children to see volunteering and service as their duties to society. It's very important. When children begin to learn that they are not just here for themselves, that they are here to help others, they begin to seek out ways to be better human beings. All right, thank you. So thank you so much for having me. I'm always available. You can always reach me. I know that this is a very quick, fast training, short training, but if you always want to reach me for an expanded version of how we can do better in our classrooms in developing character, I'm always available. God bless you. Thank you.